So the condition of the majority of the souls on this planet, excluding the starseeds and others that were brought in from other star systems, there's a reason for it. There are cycles of destruction that occur in this star system, and also because of the energy of this star system, a lot of the beings that were here and developed here were not fully positive. They had a lot of opportunity to be positive, but they chose to be more warlike and more service to self. Because of this and their inability to ascend in consciousness, they had catastrophes that ended their planet. Maldek was destroyed, had to do also with war that was going on, but it had a major part of it had to do with the solar cataclysms. And then we had beings living on Mars for a while afterwards. And as the sun started having micronovas and also other active periods, the solar winds started slowly stripping away the atmosphere of Mars. And it became, they can't inhabit it. So they moved to the moon, and Antarctica. But the beings that were killed in the great cataclysms were relocated here and began being born into human bodies. I already went over this a little. So, yeah, the law of one calls what occurred as a soul knot. There was so much trauma that I think this mass consciousness sort of collapsed in on itself. And when it did, it was unreachable by the Confederation, the groups that were trying to help it ascend and get over its traumas. And that's why they ended up on Earth to go through the cycle all over again. Earth is a refugee camp, not only for the souls that have been pulled out of other star systems as they're going through their solar events to live here, or to come here and become a human. But they actually, over millions of years, have brought human beings from other planets while their star systems were going through cataclysms, or while they were dealing with Draco infestations and other AI issues. They would bring civilizations here on Earth. They would be here for thousands of years, flourish, and then when the time was right, they would take them and relocate them back to their home system. So the Olmecs were definitely here for a long period of time, and that's Mika's people. They were here during a lot of the problems that they had, which Beth mentioned they overcame. The Mayans were the same. The Mayans were here for thousands of years, and their group came back and brought the pure blood, because it's part of this experiment, this 22 genetic experiments I'll talk about here in a minute. They took the pure bloods back to the planet and left a lot of the remnants of the people that had mixed with other cultures. So there's more than 60 groups that were in this Federation of Planets, and it matches very well with the law of one. I was brought to a meeting while I was still barely a teenager, and I saw all of these different human types of ETs, and there are a few other types, but they were mainly human, very human. And the discussion was this experiment that we're all living in. And it's a vast experiment. And I served as an intuitive empath for factions of the SSP for these meetings. And one of the things that I hadn't really described before is many times admirals, intelligence officers, or other high-ranking scientific people that would often have meetings or would have to go into new situations, they often had a favorite intuitive empath that was sort of like an assistant to them, but was really an intuitive empath and was assisting them in these meetings, preventing them from getting into dangerous situations. So intuitive empaths were very coveted and important to the brass. And the Confederation, as I said, is it's to manage this ascension program. The ET groups that are out there that are human-like are not Caucasian. They're not. If you watch movies, you see tall blondes with blue eyes, and the majority of them are various shades of dark skin, different heights, mixes of you'll see African American type mixtures with Polynesian that just slightly different than what you would see here. There's just something a little different about them, a different type of human. So as I've described, there are 22 of these genetic programs, and they're more than just genetic. Some of these programs complement each other, and some of the ET groups work with each other on them, but some of these are competing programs in many cases, and ETs will sabotage. They will, let's say in the Middle Ages in Europe, they want to either kill off or change the genetics of a competing experiment. They'll go in and program a virus to have a genetic marker that will go in and make genetic changes to the people that survive the illness. That is one of the big ways that they call humans from their experiment, as well as make genetic changes. They do it through viruses. And also, to get around cosmic law, a lot of these ET groups will actually incarnate here. So a lot of people that are saying, I'm being taken against my free will and certain things are happening to me from these ET groups, in many cases, they are that ET group incarnating here, allowing this to occur for them to get around cosmic law. Not in every case, but in many, many cases. And there were some cases to where ET groups, after they were done with their experiments, they were leaving, and the people that they were interacting with they die, they're killed. And we were thinking that it was something nefarious. They're trying to get rid of these people as they leave. But what they were doing is they were retrieving the souls, putting them back on the ship into another body and leaving. They were just leaving that body behind like a container that they used. And we interpreted it completely different. We thought it was, they were destroying evidence or whatever. So a big part of this experiment, they would have to be among us, managing us all the time if they didn't find clever ways for us to self-manage. They give us, social traditions and religions, to keep us, you can't marry outside of your race or your religion. All of these different types of programming were created from religion, different religions, and social conditioning programs to have humans self-police and prevent us from mixing with the other experiments. It's very much the start of much of the racism and war and strife that we have on this planet was programmed into us to prevent us from mixing and getting along. This program has several components. There's a religious or spiritual component because when you have a race and you want them to evolve, they have to have their genetics have to change at a certain rate as the years go by. They have to evolve and change, and then spiritually and consciously they have to keep up. If there are traumas or if other beings come in and control the planet, they'll suppress one or more of these things and mess up the balance of our ascension, basically, the way we're supposed to grow. And the way the end game is that we're supposed to take over the programs. Right now, up until recently, we had all of these ET groups that were managing our genetics, manipulating our spirituality, and our consciousness to keep us growing in a certain way. But we've reached a level now to where none of that is necessary. We can control it all ourselves. We can begin to, we know genetics, how the body works. Many of us understand the true nature of spirituality and that it's real, you know, and that it's an important part of the ascension. Another thing I wanted to mention from Beth's talk is that Ari told me that this is all about balance. She told me that rebalancing the divine feminine was an essential part of ascension. That if we don't, that was one of the first things that was knocked out of balance by beings coming to control us. And what she said about us coming together and having the intent to fight is exactly right. And they've kept us divided to prevent that from happening. But now the reins are about to be handed over to humanity. This confederation, these 60 plus groups that meet on basically a space station and discuss our fate were recently disbanded. They were told that humanity was now taking over their own experiment and that they were allowed to do cleanup work, but it was all going to be handed over to us after this solar event occurs. This, what we're calling a solar flash, but it is a lot more than a flash. And of course, partial disclosure. I've been talking for years about how they're going to start showing triangular craft in mainstream media. You'll start seeing them fly in the sky. More and more people will see them, sort of like what happened with the stealth fighter when they unveiled that. And I did not expect Space Force to be announced. That was a pretty bold move, and it's meant to aggregate and bring all of these secret space programs, technologies together under one moniker to be able to be used openly. Of course, we've talked about the ruins in Antarctica, that they have scientists and researchers down studying right now, that they're going to release information to the people as a mass distraction at some point. But they've recently discovered more ocean ruins. How many people were here from Australia? Here? Okay, this might be interesting if you know people who are divers and have this type of access. I was told that between Australia and Antarctica, and between South America and Antarctica, those two areas, that they had found a number of civilizations underwater, that what used to be islands were now deep underwater. And the navies of several countries discovered these going back decades ago. One of the ones that they discovered was off of Cuba. We've heard stories about people at Guantanamo Bay saying that they found Atlantis off of Cuba. And David Wilcock has shown slides many times of what was found there. But some of the next really big announcements, I'm told, have to do with the former civilizations that were found between Australia and Antarctica, and South America and Antarctica. I was also told, and I talked to my Edge of Wonder friends, and they had heard something similar, interestingly enough, that U.S. Army whistleblower is being groomed right now to come forward with information about the Grand Canyon. In the Grand Canyon, the U.S. military for a couple hundred years has had complete control, and they found amazing things, things that validate the Hopi myths very well. That's a couple slides away, but this is the overview, okay, of what we're hitting. So a lot of the people I have contact with in the NSA, they listen to the information I talk about this wider secret space program, but what they're only aware of are a couple of space stations that we've had and these triangular craft. Though that is what is being aggregated into Space Force right now, I'm told, to be released. And of course, all of the information about Antarctica is going to be released. At first, they're going to tell us that it was a human civilization, and then later on let us know that they were human, but a little bit different. A little bit different. And the kicker of one of the reasons that the elite want to release the information about this lost civilization is because they're going to tie the 13 bloodlines to this group and justify why we should allow them to lead us, because they're demigods. That's a part of why they're releasing this information, in addition to it being a mass distraction when all of these sealed indictments are unsealed. And of course, we've discovered a civilization on Mars. Also on the moons of the gas giants, we've found destroyed civilizations. And the one thing consistently that they found is that there was a cataclysmic, there was a number of cataclysmic events that have occurred in our solar system, and they found mass ejected from the sun on the surface of Mars, on the surface of the moon, and other places, proving that this micronova that occurs every 12,000 years or so had destroyed civilization many times. I got to see some of the sonar from some of these locations. I think the one I saw was between South America and Antarctica. These submarines, if they had not told me that this was a sonar image, I would have thought it was a photograph. It was so high resolution, so detailed, it looked like a photograph. But it was shot in complete pitch dark with very advanced sonar that they have on these submarines. How many people remember in Cosmic Disclosure when I described us sending teams down into the caverns, into the inner Earth, to just see what was down there, and they started finding adobe villages and old buildings that were dilapidated and hadn't been lived in for thousands of years, and they could tell from the pottery and all of the debris around that thousands of people had lived there for a long time. Well, as they went deeper and deeper into these caverns, they started finding more of this. And I saw photographs in the smart glass pad, but I didn't know it was from this location in the Grand Canyon that this new whistleblower is supposedly going to talk about. But everything they found backed up the Hopi and Zuni folklore of what they say happened in previous ages, including finding bodies of these ET groups that they call the ant people. How many people here know what their mission is? I would venture that probably all of you on a subconscious level know what that mission is. You were born into this body with these dispositions, personality types. You had these experiences for a reason. Your hobbies that you were like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this stupid hobby? It's a waste of time. What you went to do, what you went to college for, if you went to college, what you're doing as a career, that is a part of your mission. It's a part of the learning process guiding you towards your mission. And what's going on, what you've chosen to do in life may point you more towards your true mission than you want to hear. Because it may not always be a comfortable mission. It rarely is. Especially getting introverts like most of us that get up on stage here and tell us to tell these amazing stories about what's happening to us. It's very difficult.